The hangout on air is live. Hi, welcome to Kick-Ass Switch, putting the K in magic. I am Joanna DeVoe, and you are watching a video about nature worshiping pagans and hippies and the God in all things. I have been talking about God all month here on YouTube and on my podcast, Hippie Witch, and in my newsletter and on Patreon. And what I have found is that this is a very, very challenging subject, not just for me, but for other people, because I have pissed some people off. I don't think I've even said anything outrageous, but I think God is such a sensitive subject for people, and they get so attached to what their idea of God or goddess. There are people that get upset if you only say God and you don't put the S on the end to represent women. And then there are people that are Christian that get upset if you talk about God in any other way other than in the Christian way. And so I have felt vulnerable, but also kind of at a lack for words. I have the chat up this time. Thank you so much for those of you who participated in the chat. I was able to see your chat comments after I ended the last hangout, but not during. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, because I can see right now there's like a chat bar in the side and it's just me. And there are 6 viewers. I didn't know where to look for that before, but hello, 6 viewers. And if you're chatting with me and I still can't see you, I have no idea why. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And in addition to that, I'm very behind on catching up with comments here, there, and everywhere. So please forgive me. Forgive me as we speak of God this month. I wanted to talk about, I just talked on Patreon. I'm going to be talking there more as well in the upcoming week about the God within and how you are God. If God flows through all things, and all things are within God or source or the divine or goddess. I could go on and on and on. It's hard to be inclusive when you're talking about God, although I always try to be. I think that the divine flows through all things, and all things flows through the divine. So in a sense, you are God, and you have this co-creative relationship with this God force, goddess force energy that exists. And that's why we have magic. That's why we have the law of attraction. And it also stands to reason, if it's true that God is within you, the whole namaste, the spirit in me sees the spirit in you, the God in me sees the God in you. If that is true, it's also true that for me, this is not true for everybody, and I realize that, but it's true that God is in all things, and God is in nature, which brings me around to nature worship. For me, the closest, this goes all the way back to when I was a Christian growing up, the fastest, most visceral and tangible experience I have had of God has been through nature. And it's especially true as a witch, but even when I was a child, I would feel very connected to God, or Jesus is really who, the Son of God is who I was. I say Son of God with that funny face because now I see the Son of God as being the S-U-N. I subscribe to Astro-theology in that sense, and believe that religions like Christianity derived from earlier religions that were based on the cosmos, as above, so below, Astro-theology. It's really interesting if you want to look this stuff up, and you could just start with the Son of God and have a whole field day. But if I was, floating in the swimming pool, I felt connected to God. If I was looking at a beautiful sunset, I felt connected to God. And it's funny to look back at the way that nature was represented in Christianity to me as a child, because now I see the same bits of nature and I see like witchy symbols. For example, the sand dollar, the little holes on the back of a sand dollar, I see that and I see the witch's star or the witch's pinnacle, the witch's pyramid, however you want to say it. Whereas when I was a child, I was taught that there's a whole story behind how the sand dollar represents the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and the different holes in the sand dollar are like where they put the nails in. This is a morbid thing to teach children, in my opinion, by the way. Some of, yeah, I don't see you in the comment section. I apologize again. I can see there are 12 of you now. I am sending you love. I don't know how to talk to you here. I don't know what I'm doing. This has been such a chaotic month that I'm actually leaning on these live videos because I haven't had the time to pre-record a video and edit it and put my little song at the beginning and the groovy music underneath. And so it saved me a lot of time, and to wait for, you know, it to export and then to upload. But in addition to that, the chaos kind of bleeds over here because I really don't know what I'm doing. Going back to, I'm just going to keep talking because I don't want to ramble on about how I can't see you, because I really can't see you. And I apologize. Talk amongst yourselves. I noticed you did that last time. The messages started with like, hi, we could see you, hey. And then you all just started talking to each other, which is cool. I hope you do that, because otherwise I will feel responsible for not being able to get this thing. I am responsible for not being able to get it going, but I don't know what I'm doing. If you have the magical secret to getting the comment section going on these live videos, I would love it if you shared that with me. But circling back to nature worship, I'm purposely saying that here because I have always had a problem with the word worship. I just, something about it feels like I'm not worthy. And I don't really have that experience when I'm out in nature. But when I did some Googling of the word worship, right before I came on air just now, I wrote down one sentence, the feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for deity. And that I can connect to a little bit better, because I do feel that reverence and that sense of awe and that sense that there's something greater than myself. But in general, I don't really think of myself as a nature worshiper. I think of myself as a nature enjoyer. Like, I learn from nature. I think that synchronicities appear from nature. So you can pray or do a spell and answers will come to you through synchronicities that often present themselves in nature. And I think it's really interesting to harness the elements of nature when you are doing any kind of spell work, even if it's not like a huge ritual, but you just want to, if there's a windy day and you want to release something into the wind, or you just want the feeling of refreshment and like a cleansing feeling, going out and standing in a windy day, to me, is a spell. It's an air spell. That's why Scott Cunningham's book, Earth Power, is one of my favorite books. It's like the #1 spell book that I recommend to people. And I can see how it could be disappointing if you're looking for like ceremonial magic or something like that, because it's almost like a book for kindergartners. You could share it with your kindergartners if you wanted, and I think they would totally understand. There's beautiful illustrations like that Nouveau, Art Nouveau Renaissance that happened in the 70s. It's like black and white illustrations in that style. They're beautiful. And then the spells are just very, very simple nature spells. And I think not only is simple powerful, people like to make things more complicated than they need to be, but it's also awesome for those of us living really busy, chaotic lives to just take a moment to step out of the chaos and the busyness and to step into nature and get that God connection going. And I'm going to keep checking. to see if I magically can see you guys chatting. No, I cannot. You would think that I would know how to do that by now. I've been on YouTube for so many years. My eyebrow is tickling me too. I have a tickle. I don't know what that is. Stay focused, Joe. Stay focused. Don't get carried away by the chaos. Be the calm in the storm. That has been my motto all week. I don't know if this is a Mercury retrograde thing I'm experiencing, or a Pluto retrograde thing I'm experiencing, or just my turn on the random wheel of life that I'm experiencing, but holy chaotic hell. So much craziness this week. I'm impressed that I'm actually dressed and sitting here before you now. Have you been experiencing that? I have, for sure. So I said something about learning from nature, and I think that really, because God is this inexplicable, so hard to pin down idea, but we all try, I think. All of us except for atheists, I don't know. I've seen it presented that atheism is a religion unto itself, and I think some people can get religious about their atheism, but I think everyone besides atheists, we recognize this something feels like God to us. There's something that feels greater than us. We have a sense of feeling eternal in this way, whether we believe we're going to heaven or hell, or that we're going to reincarnate or go over the rainbow bridge. We all have this sense, and maybe atheists do too. If you're an atheist, I would love to hear from you, that there's something greater than us that flows through us, that we can access. And then we try to name it, and then we try to explain it. But I think for a lot of us, it really just comes back to nature, which is why I'm interested in astro-theology, because I think in the very beginning, when people were trying to describe God and create rituals to work with God and petition God and ask God for help, I mean, what was right in front of their face but the sun and the moon and the planets and the stars, and then all around them, the trees and the dirt and the water and the animals. And I think we've out sophisticated ourselves in trying to anthropomorphize all of these things, and then turn all of these things into one thing, into like monotheism. We've really taken the soul out of our own spirituality in a way, which is why it feels good to so many of us when we leave monotheism and we start exploring things like pantheism or animism or anything kind of pagan or witchy. It starts to feel resonant and almost like a sense of déjà vu, or like you're coming back to yourself in a way. It starts to make sense at some point. In the beginning, you might just be reading and playing around with spells, but at some point, something clicks in for you. For me, it was the Wheel of the Year that really, I don't know, I can't explain it. I kind of came alive as a witch. I'm coming up on my witchy-versary, my anniversary, as like officially declaring and dedicating myself as a witch, which really wasn't that long ago. It was like 6 years ago that I did that. But the Wheel of the Year had so much to do with that for me, because it was just beautiful, just going, before I even officially did a full year and a day, and I tracked it in my book of shadows, before that, I spent a year just recognizing, like, oh yeah, it's a turn of the wheel. What's one of these Sabbat things, you know? And I would learn about the Sabbat, and I would go sit out in my yard and experience whatever was going on in nature. And I would watch whatever YouTube videos I could find of people talking about the Wheel of the Year and that particular Sabbat. And by the time I was done with that year, I was ready to do like a full dedicated, yeah, let's do this witch thing. And so I did. And I've been doing it ever since. And every single time I go around, it gets deeper and deeper and more significant for me. And I've really made some awesome connections between Oh, so many things. That's what's so fun about it. But nature is a teacher in this way. It teaches us about the cycles of life, the cycles of a creative project, the cycles of a relationship. It's all reflected in the cycles of the sun, in the cycles of the moon, in the life, death, life cycle of an animal or a plant, and the way things are all interconnected and they work holistically. It's this is weird talking to myself. I feel like I'm like, woo, like way out in outer space here. But it all started clicking and I started feeling grounded and at peace with these cycles. I started learning that, like, oh, you know, the winter of your life, if you're going through a very bad, hard, cold time, spring is going to come around, and there's comfort in that. And other religions recognize this as well. I talk about Christianity all the time because that's what I'm from, and I know so many of you are too, but even Christianity recognizes this with, you know, Jesus rising from the tomb, which is what they celebrate during Easter time, coincidentally, right around spring. To me, Christians are really like sun worshipers. They just don't know it because through the years, this sun worship has been anthropomorphized to the point where we now have SON worship. And either is cool if that's what inspires you, if that's what makes you feel connected to like the life force, the creative force. I think it's all cool. I just get more out of going all the way back to nature and my backyard, just going and like kicking my shoes off and walking around in the dirt, to me, is a spiritual experience. And maybe that's why we get, like, you know, dirt worshiping hippies or dirt worshiping pagans. There is something that physically happens to your body and your mind, literally, when you walk in the dirt. It's very, very healing. I recommend checking out Earthing by Clifton Ober, I think is his name. Clifton Ober. The name of the book is Earthing, but he talks about like the science of why laying on the ground or walking on the ground with your bare feet is actually very healing. And I think that's another thing that nature shows us, is that we can work with nature, and we should work with nature for our own health, both spiritually and physically. And that's another piece that really fell into place with me when I started studying witchcraft, because I had been really into rewilding, thanks to Daniel Vitalis and the whole rewilding movement, and this idea of like bringing your diet, basically, is what I was mostly interested in, although it extends to all different kinds of things, but bringing your diet back around to nature. And I learned in eating a natural diet and getting rid of processed food and working with nature that way, that anytime you try to bypass nature in the name of convenience, anytime you try to consume like a man-made product because you think it's going to taste better or it's going to be more convenient or more impressive in some way, it always comes around to bite you in the ass. You may be God, but you should not be plaguing God. Like, anytime we try to play God, something happens, usually later on. Like, we don't realize it's happening in the moment because we get that instant gratification. We get that payoff of sugar. You know, it's like, I'm sure cocaine feels lovely in the beginning and it's fantastic, but like 2 years into doing it every single day, your life is falling apart. There are other ways to get high. Do you know what I'm saying? And nature, you know, nature is your friend that way. So I learned that. Why am I talking about cocaine? I don't know. These live events, they really bring out the quirks in people's personalities. But I first learned about rewilding from the perspective of food. And then as I was practicing witchcraft, which for me is very much rooted in just nature, participating in nature and doing these nature-based spells, I started getting this idea of like, oh my gosh, that's what we're doing spiritually. We are rewilding ourselves spiritually. And the last video that I made here where I was talking about spiritual abuse, I think so much of what I was saying about how Western cultures, I don't want to bash Christians here, but it is Christians who did this to a large degree. I know other people did too, but they would go in, you know, what they did to Native Americans or what they did to Africans or what they did to South Americans. Like they would go into these indigenous cultures where these people had a real working active relationship with God, with nature as God, and they separated them from their gods. They did it with physical abuse and mental abuse and spiritual abuse, to the point where these people literally eventually, over the course of however many generations, their spirit was broken and they adopted this new brand of spirituality that put a middleman between them and nature. Their own nature. They were separated from their own soul, like their own connection to God. And that was done to them systematically. So I think it's really exciting when you go back and you start reclaiming that for yourself. Checking on you still. Yeah, no, it's just me. You'll probably see like a question mark and a slash because it said to list all available commands, enter / question mark. So I did that. I clicked on all the buttons. Nothing was working. Nothing. So what else do I want to say about all of this? I have a cool discount actually that I will be having up probably by the end of the day here for anybody that wants to do the Wheel of the Year with me, the Psycho-Spiritual Wheel of the Year, because Beltane is coming up and it's a really fun way to start working with like the masculine and feminine energies. And I like to sometimes like offer discounts so people can get in on that at a good like 40% off. So I can't say it without doing it. I will do that. When I post this video on my blog, I will post a discount down below for those of you who want to join me for that. And I had a whole bunch of things I wanted to talk about, but it all feels so random in my head. Like I have these ideas of permaculture and how, should I go into permaculture? I don't know, or the moon as a satellite. I have like all these ideas ping-ponging in my head. I guess I'll talk about the permaculture for a second, because I was talking about food, and it's interesting to watch what we're doing to the environment and how so many pagan people and new agey people, to their credit too, are very protective of the environment and very upset about what's going on politically as these environmental protections are being removed. And it's very disturbing to some of us. And I think that something that you can do is support permaculture, because the way permaculture works, a lot of vegans, for example, they will really focus on how factory farming of animals is destroying the planet. But that's only like one piece of the pie. Monocrops are also destroying the planet, and deforestation to make space for these monocrops. And when the way monocrops works reminds me so much of this idea of spiritual abuse that I was talking about, where they would go in and separate these indigenous peoples from the land and from their personal connection to God and from the holistic experience of God in nature. Because what happens when you create a monocrop is you have to go in and kill all life forms in that, however, you know, how many acres of land, and you flatten it, you get rid of all of the other plants that exist that work together, all of the animals that live on that piece of land, all of the insects that work on that piece of land. You basically sterilize it and then fertilize it with chemicals to just grow one crop again and again and again, which is not natural. They have to replant the crop every single year, and it becomes a monocrop, just like monotheism. Get it? And it's highly destructive to the planet. What permaculture does is it creates a closed loop system in that waste becomes resources. So the animals, it is with animals and plants, the animals fertilize the plants and the plants feed the animals, and it goes in a circle. It's way more complicated than that, but it's self-sustaining. It's a closed loop system. They don't have to bring in outside resources. It takes time to convert a piece of land to the point where it can sustain itself and just work like that naturally and holistically, but that is what permaculture does. So I think that's just important to know in general. If you want to support the environment, find farms that are using permaculture in your area and support them. Buy their stuff, give them your money. You can always vote for your dollars. That's important, but also it's kind of like what I was saying about rewilding. You can look at your spirituality as a rewilding process. And whether you want to think about it as worshiping nature or just kind of returning to your own natural state, it doesn't matter, however you want to frame it. But I think it's really powerful to look at that. And nature gives us clues all the time about how it's working. All we have to do is slow down and come into the present and pay attention. And there's a lesson like sitting right in front of our face, whether it's the way the masculine and feminine work together in the creation process, or the cycles of life are integral to nature, and everything that dies is born again. If you want to use that to inform your ideas of life after death, that's a very comforting thing. And like I said, that could take forms in beliefs in blah, blah, blah. That could take form in, how am I trying to say this? That could take the form of a belief in reincarnation, or it could take form in the belief of some kind of afterlife. But nature has never let us down. When we have studied nature, when we look at nature, it's showing us what the God force is. It's showing us how everything works, and we are a part of that. And this whole idea of as above, so below, as within, so without, that's the core. That is the heart of being a nature worshiper, or being a pagan, or being a maker of magic. If you want to work with magic, if you want to work with the law of attraction, and you're not even all that spiritual, or you don't consider yourself to be religious, or you don't feel drawn to the word pagan, or you don't feel drawn to the word witch, that is totally cool. If you just want to practice the law of attraction, I still recommend really connecting with nature and thinking about the cycles of nature and watching the cycles of nature. And there's just so much that you can learn from that and integrate into your own personal practice. So I was hoping to be able to take questions from you all, but since I can't, I'm going to end this broadcast here and hope that some of you will, I don't know, tell me how to work the chats section so that I can do this more successfully in the future. And until we meet again, stay tuned. If you're interested in that discount, I will have it up by the end of the day on my blog, and I'm sure then I will post it all over social media and in my newsletter. You're not going to miss it. I'll have it up till Tuesday. So it'll be up for quite a few days for those of you who want the early bird special. And until we meet again, much love to you. Peace. Let's see what this sucker looks like. If I can find a good freeze frame.